Today, we have on a legendary head coach at one of the most elite schools in America. He has 662 career wins. He was the 2019 Ivy League Coach of the Year. He has won a national championship. He has had numerous MLB draft selections. He has developed players such as Jake Suttleson, who was named on the Ivy League honor roll and was the league's most valuable player. He also has developed Patrick McCall, Hunter Bridge, and Jonah Bayless, who were all drafted, with Jonah Bayless reaching the MLB. As a college athlete, he was a very talented player. He was a two-sport star, captain, and an All-American defensive back defensive back on the football team. Excuse me. He was a great player, and now he is a legendary head coach. From the coaches and players I know, he's even a better person. And again, he coaches at arguably the most famous university in the world. Welcome to the show, head coach Bill Decker. How we doing?
How you doing, Jermaine?
I'm doing all right, hanging in there.
Yeah.
Hanging in there. So today I want to talk to you about your team, your season, what you look for in players, the recruiting process, and anything else you would like to talk about. Most of these questions are come from basically the parents, and I threw in a few questions that I'm just intrigued to ask you. But yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. So first of all, let's start by talking about your season and your team. Talk a little bit about your team and what made you guys gel together, and do you guys have a motto or slogan? Because I think that's important. And I remember playing at UCLA, we had a motto, and that kept us together. So I want to talk to you about your team and your motto.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like everybody else across the country, we're a little bit shortened in our 2020 campaign. We were fortunate enough anyway to have our two series. Our first trip was down to Alabama. Down in Tuscaloosa, and then the following weekend we went down to Stetson University in DeLand. And ironically, we weren't sure how we were going to get back from Stetson at one point because of everything that's going on in the world right now with COVID-19. But we did get the thumbs up to take a flight back on that Sunday night, before everything kind of really spread. But I liked our team. We were going through playing a lot of young kids, with the exception of like Suttleson and Shaw and Chad Minato, or three of our seniors that were pretty healthy, and was good. We had a good group of kids. They really invested in one another. We had some injuries. We had some guys that were not going to play this year, which sometimes that could be a negative, but I think what it did, Jermaine, is it gave everybody else an opportunity to play a little bit more, even if it was just those 6 games early in the season. But our kids could give a good effort every day. That's one of the things that I preached to not just our kids but our coaching staff. Try to be consistent, try to be steady. Try to eliminate all those ups and downs that can drive us all so nuts, whether you're a player or whether you're a coach. Either side, but consistency, effort, accountability. And I think the big thing for us, and we've done this, really since I've been here, is just really to try and invest in one another, as not just as players, but as people, because we're going to have to do this thing together. And that includes, whoever's in our locker room, the 30 to 35 guys, and then our staff. We want to try to do this together, do it the right way. Handle situations that we need to handle, but the whole thing is to try to learn from one another, and that's part of the educational value on being in a competitive program. You're going to have some tough times along the way, and you got to get through them, but you're going to have a lot of great times along the way too, and you really got to savor those moments.
Exactly. Well said. Can you talk about an upcoming player that we should look out for on your team?
Well, the first person that comes to mind didn't even play this year because he was coming off of Tommy John as a high school senior. But I think Adam Stone has a chance to be a real good one. And we've had some good ones recently that have been developed on the bump, whether it be, Biggie or Shaw or Simon Rosenblum Larson or Noah Zavalis, and Tanner Anderson's in the big leagues, and Sean Poppin, got the call up last year. Those guys are all kind of recent graduates from Harvard, But I think Adam's got a really good chance to
Amazing.
be a good one.
Let's talk about your hitting philosophy or pitching philosophy when it comes to your team. Is there like a message that you guys go off of as far as hitting? What do you guys teach?
Try to keep it fairly simple. I know we're in a different era right now with all the analytics and everything else, and I think some of those measurables are really important. I get concerned a little bit, and I think right now we're a little bit too far left. I think there's too much information out there. I think it can play some games up top with you a little bit sometimes, but those things are important. But I think just to grind out at bats, to have quality at bats, to use the middle of the field, to really, if you're a guy that can do this, and you need to put that in your toolbox and you need to use it. But it's an approach where, in my opinion, if you're balanced and fundamentally sound and can compete a little bit, okay, and understand that I've got to control this, and that if I'm a 300 hitter at any level, that's pretty good. And people always used to talk about baseball or hitting in particular being a game of failure. I think we need to really harp on those three times or we do have success, and put the others aside. But the game in simplest terms is getting on, moving them over, and bringing them in, and you know production with guys on third base, production with guys in second base with two outs. We try to put the ball in motion when we can, but it's not necessarily what we're built to do. Move runners. Again, I know what baseball analytics say, but I'm going to sacrifice bunt when I have to sacrifice bunt, and I'm okay out if I've got to get one. So, again, fairly simple. Baseball is a game of repetition, but I think we want to practice the right way. I'm really happy with our staff, our coaching staff, and their investment in our kids and the video and the things that they do with our guys. And as you can imagine, at a place like Harvard, we've got to be careful. We're all legislated by the number of hours, but there are times where we have to kick our kids out of the cages because that's where they want to be. So as long as they're doing that on their own and the right way, I think it's a great way to continue and self-teach and buddy teach with coaches not there. I think on the other side of the ball and the bump, I've basically stayed away from it. And the only thing that I've always told our guys is we got to hold runners on. We got to be a little bit quicker to the plate. And we got to pitch with a little bit of conviction on both sides of the plate too. So we don't want to give in. We want to get after, but we got to be strike throwers on our terms, and we got to compete through those moments, when we have to compete.
Amazing. So there will be many young players that watch this. What's your advice to the young players?
Have some fun with it. I go back in simplest terms, and it's almost, Jermaine, like an elementary school teacher. 5 times 12 is greater than 1 times 60. And the young guys out there, you got to figure that out. 5 times a week times 12 minutes, you're doing it every day. It becomes a habit rather than just, picking the stick up 1 time a week and doing it for an hour. So
I like that.
But I think the guys need to have fun with it a little bit more. I think there was a phase in baseball where we got too mechanical. Everybody had to do it this way. And I think we took some of the athleticism out of the player. And I think what's happening now is we're kind of getting the other way where, it's not a cookie cutter.
Yeah.
It's not a one size fits all type of thing. And I think that, yes, there are some fundamental principles, but we need to be athletic, and be who you are. If you're 6'5", 220, then you're going to be different than a guy that's, 5'8", 175. But there still are some principles. We still want to put the ball in play. We still want to, backspin it and drive it a little bit. But don't try to be somebody you're not, because you're going to set yourself up for failure.
Yes, I always tell that to the young players. Find out who you are. That's what you need to figure out. Figure out who you are and be the best you could be. That's because at the end of the day, you being a head coach, your job is to trust the player. If you trust them, with the skill that they have, then you're more likely going to play them because you know you can trust them in those situations.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think that the staff needs to trust that as well. And I have tremendous trust uh, in my staff, or in our staff, I should say. Guys are doing a great job. They work hard, and I try not to be a slave driver. I really have to tell them, hey, they got to carve out some time in your daily life, try to take a step back, because we're not going to cover all quarters of the country,
Right.
on the recruiting trail and whatever else. You got to kind of pick your spots, but you also got to live your life a little bit. And I think our guys trust our staff, and I think our staff trust our guys, and that's really, really important.
Okay, so let's flip it over to the recruiting side because most people that's what they want to go to your school. So when it comes to recruiting position players, what do you look for? Is there a specific checklist criteria you go off? Like what would open your eyes?
I think the biggest thing for me is just the movements, the athleticism, the feet, the glove action, just the overall. You can tell. I mean, there's linear speed, and then there's guys that can move a little bit. So, we're all at these recruiting type events and showcases, and that really provide a great platform for so many young kids, high school kids, and whomever, to showcase their abilities. Okay, and I think that's just one part of it, one component of it. Um, but I think you need to see him play, and I think you need to see him play multiple times. And but if we're looking for a bat, then we know we're probably going to give up a little bit of speed because of that. If we're looking for a guy in the middle that can flat out play defense, and maybe he doesn't have that at the plate, then we're okay with it. So you got to kind of pick and choose your battles and try to put this whole thing together. Um, and I say this in a really positive way. We're obviously a little bit limited in the numbers that we can do, and where they need to be academically. And I'm, not really going to get into that, but, if we're going to get 5 to 7 kids or 6 to 7 kids a year, we have to be right, because if we're not right, we're not going to get a transfer in, or we're not going to pick up the phone and just get another kid in. And I say that respectful to not just our league, but to everybody across the country.
Okay. Yeah. Now let's flip it over to pitchers. What do you look for? Is there a specific checklist criteria you go off of?
They've got to have some velocity, you know. And I'm not a big time velocity guy, but I think you do need to have that. And I think the feel for a breaking ball and the changeup, or at least the ability to be able to develop that, is really important. I think the unknown, Jermaine, is, is there a history of arm injuries in this particular guy,
Oh,
or
wow.
does he spike it or stab it, and that's going to create something. So those are kind of the unknowns that, just like we talked about, we need to be right. And if we're trying to recruit somebody that potentially is damaged goods or can become that way, it's just not going to help us. So I think we need to be careful. But again, somebody that can do a couple different things, and how we balance the right and lefties, pretty important. We're trying to get, we'd love to get one guy on the left side per year, but sometimes you can't control that. And sometimes maybe that guy, because of he just can't get in academically or doesn't have that academic profile, we're just going to take the best guy we can.
Yeah, that's interesting. All that stuff you're talking about, interesting. You're the first coach to talk about the arm, the unknown injuries. You're the first one. Really, that's really interesting to me. At what age can a kid expect to be looked at or recruited by your program? Do you look at players in ninth grade, or are you 10th grade or junior? Like what years for your program, what do you guys look at?
Well, there's so many events. I mean, look what's going down at Perfect Game and everywhere else now. So, you know, I mean, I saw some 23s last year, and it wasn't that I was looking for those kids that were going to be in the class of 23. They just happened to be at the event that I I was at. So you make note of it, and usually in my notes, it's like, hey, this kid's a really young kid. Just, maybe follow him next year. And I think our other staff members do a great job doing the same type of thing. Put them in your memory bank. You can always come back to it. Try to investigate. And that's what we do, right? As potential student athletes, investigate all of our colleges across the country. We're like private eye detectives, man. We're looking. I really expect our guys to lock in when they're at events, and you can learn a lot, not just from the players on the field, but you can watch those interactions that they have in the dugout, the interactions they have when they walk in the yard, when they're with their parents, how they conduct themselves, because that people skill and that other thing that sometimes is not measurable, you have to see it, is really important. That character piece, so to say.
Amazing. Let's here's a question for you. I think you pretty much touched on it, but are there stats that are considered D1 in your eyes? Do you look at like exit velocities or other metrics? Are there stats that in your eyes considered, all right, that guy's elite?
Yeah, I know we all get caught up in velocity, and
Yeah.
and I'll just, from my perspective, when I'm looking at infielders, I don't think they have to be 90 across the diamond.
Okay.
I think what they need to do is have one of good feet, good hands, be able to read the hops, get to the ball, the spin, what the direction, whatever, and then exchange it. It's nice if you do have that. And I think, again, just like the pitching component, you've got to have some. But, I might be 95 across the diamond, but if I don't have any range, either to my throwing side or my glove side, I'm not going to be able to play in the middle. I'm probably going to be moved to first base, or another position, or become a DH, right? So,
Yeah.
I just think for me, again, it's the athleticism. Uh, in terms of the bat speed, it's nice to guys that, some guys are, in the 90s or whatever, but is it good exit speed, or is it just always these fly balls, fly balls, fly balls? So I think, again, it's how you value everything. And again, as I said at the onset here, Jermaine, I'm not so caught up in the numbers. Okay, I just want somebody who can play. And we've got a kid in our program right now that doesn't pass the eye test, but he's always on base. He's always competing, and you're like, geez, he did it. He did something else. So, but he isn't that eye test guy. And all he did as a young player was just continue to impress us every day. Gave us some flexibility to kind of move him around a little bit in the infield. Put him in the outfield, maybe throw him on the bump a little bit. Because he's just goofy enough, ball coming out of his hand, to be really effective.
I think that kind of sums up what I was saying earlier about trust. I mean, you really trust that player. You can put him all over the field and he's going to get the job done. And he may not be flashy where he'll open every guy's eyes, but he's a winning ball player. And I think that's what you want as an organization.
I do. And I think that trust factor is in so many different ways. Again, I think I trust my staff. I think our staff knows that they can trust me, and I'm going to work for them. And it's the same thing with our players. I mean, we're going to work hard for you, and we want you to work hard for your teammates, because, again, those hiccups that we've all incurred over our careers,
Yes.
been in it as long as I have, you've seen a bunch of them. You got to move on from them, and they can't become part of the routine. So, I mean, you've probably heard this before. I don't know. Sometimes it's not important who's in the locker room. Sometimes it's important who's not in the locker room, because if you get the wrong guy in there, he's going to beat you up every single day.
Yeah.
So, the
And
character piece and that investment that I spoke about is really important.
And I think that's huge also for college, because college is more like a family. Because when you get to the pro level is everyone's trying to basically get up there and do for themselves more so than the team. And yeah, I like to tell young players that as well. And I think I'm just glad you touched on that right now.
I hope it doesn't leak down, I mean, obviously there's always going to be a little bit of that, and there is a little bit of that in the college game as we can't avoid it, but just think to minimize it. And again, part of our jobs, and I think I heard Tim Corbin say this a couple of years ago at our national convention, is our job is still to educate young men, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of those conversations are going to be really good. And some of those conversations are going to be a little bit tougher, but it's just to continue to bring people along. And I think this was year 35. I've seen a lot of kids 16 to 22 grow up in front of my eyes that their moms and dads didn't see. So, you kind of work with them every day, and you just do the best you can.
Amazing. The next question I got is, should a recruit contact you or wait to be recruited?
In general terms, because I think it's the way I have to operate, compliance-wise, but in general terms, they can reach out to all of us via emails, and I think that might be the first way to start the process for everybody. And then, depending on what the year they are, then, and we're at an event or we're at a game or whatever, we can begin to correspond with them, within the legislation and the compliance of the NCAA.
And this is the number one question that everyone always says: how should a player go about getting exposure?
Got to be out there. Got to be out there. If you're not in the arena, nobody's going to see you. I think you got to pick and choose a little bit. I don't think you have to overdo it, because we're out there too. It's I take a step back every once in a while when I see the same kid over and over and over again, and obviously, families' bankroll is different from family to family, but I see too many people spending too much money sometimes, and they have to have a feel for the level of play that their son can potentially be at. And I'm also a believer that, if college baseball is in your cards, or whatever sport's in your cards, then there's a school for everybody. But in general, Jermaine, people will know when people are interested in them. You'll
Right.
get that feel. You'll get that feel. And, over the years, we've all been bearers of some really good news. Hey, you're going to go through the process, the college selection process, and as a recruited athlete, and hopefully it's going to work out. But we've also been the bearer of a lot of tough conversations. And I've always said to try to separate those, because it's not about the person. College coaches across the country have to make some tough decisions sometimes, and you got to be a little bit selfish, not as a person, but for the betterment of your program and what you believe. And we spend an awful lot of time doing that, as we all do with our staff. So, I mean, I just got off a Zoom about a half hour ago with our staff just to check in. It's Friday, it's the end of the week, and the world we're living right now. So it's also good to see them.
By the way, how's Brady? How's Brady doing? I've been chatting with Brady for the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, he does a good job for us. Unfortunately, his second year with us is a little bit shortened, but he's good. He went fishing down the Cape the other day. Said he caught a couple rainbow trout, brought them home, so that's good.
I'll have to message him and ask him about that. So when talking about exposure, what are the best ways? Is it video, showcases, social media, camps, email? You could just touch on it lightly.
Yeah, I think it's all of the above. You want to send a little bit of video. Coaches use it as a reference point to go back to. I mean, you can get video online anywhere right now, but certainly the exposures, the games, going to a 2-day event or a 3-day event. And I think the other thing too is just getting on college campuses in general, which, if you're interested in school X, man, you want to, and you want to get on that campus and have a good feel for it, and you get a better feel, because those schools, coaches can be there and they're interacting with kids and so on and so forth. Problem now is we can't do it in
Yeah.
the current state of the country, which is fine. So, most of our conversations now are just on the phone, and who knows when they're going to, kind of unlock the situation we're in. And I hope they don't do it prematurely.
Right. Yeah, we're over here in New York. I know I told you earlier, but I think we might start opening things up slowly here, but I'm not, in my opinion, I don't think that's going to happen. But that's what everyone's talking about right around here. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Let me continue. Got a few more questions for you.
Yeah.
At showcases, you pretty much talked about that. Let's go into, you talked about that as far as email and video. All right, this is a question that's been asked several times. Do you look for players with a 3.0 GPA to 3.5 GPA versus a player with a 4.0 GPA?
We try to model ourselves, on the statistics that the school, has. So we're looking for high GPAs. Standardized test scores do matter. Sometimes you can debate what's more important. My opinion, you know, in general terms about the recruiting process is your transcript is going to speak volumes about what you do every day in your life and how you get out of bed, put 2 feet on the floor and go. You and I are not going to take an exam again. Is that correct? You and I are going back to class, but it's up to the kid, and it shows a kid's pattern and consistency of getting out of bed and going for it. Whether they're AP or honors classes, your transcript is going to dictate and open up doors or close some doors. Okay, and I don't want to devalue the importance of standardized tests, because that is still and probably always will be, one of the measurements. Okay, I think the unknown and something that's really important is what else in the world are you doing? Are you in positions of leadership in your school, your community? What's going to separate you from that other applicant? And if we can only take one of you, sometimes that third thing is a big time separator. So, and also, the interview process at schools across the country, and how you can hold a conversation and present yourself. And, people are pretty smart. They know when these conversations are genuine, and they know when they're rehearsed.
Right.
So, but it's it's who you are, and it's like at the showcases, which we mentioned before. Be who you are at the showcase, because people are watching. People are watching you, and they'll know the difference between a guy that is kind of a ball player and a guy that maybe is just kind of faking he's hustling. You can, if you're out there and you'll be able to know.
So I want to talk about a little bit more about what you just said. You said about the extra thing. So you guys look for players that have, let's say, they're doing stuff in the community. Do you guys look for guys that are like that, that are more, obviously your school is more academic, so you guys want that. But is there other things they can do, like community service, or just to allow themselves to stand out besides just baseball?
Yeah, and that's what I was hitting on. In general, I think we all do that. And again, I can't specifically talk about Harvard because we're not not supposed to, but I think we all look at that stuff. What are you doing in the community? What are you doing? Community service around Thanksgiving and soup kitchens, and it's not very hard to do when you think about all the time we have. And if a high school kid can do 3 or 4 of these things every year, all of a sudden he's got 12 things he can talk about on his resume. But it's a matter of getting out there and doing it, and there's plenty of time in the world. And you and I both know that this thing right here, if they put down this for an hour a day and do something else, you need some downtime, but it should be what you want to do. Church, helping people out, doing research on something. I mean, you got kids volunteering all over the time right now because of, COVID-19. As long as they're safe, what an opportune time to help some people out.
I love it. I love it. That's a great message. Do you recruit players by following them in high school or just showcases and travel teams? That's like one of these confusing things that everyone talks about, as far as recruiting goes.
Yeah, you know, I think most guys are doing a combination of everything. I was on the phone with a coach that I know, and we weren't even talking about anything, other than I was just checking in with him to say hello. And all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, Deck, yeah, there's this little guy over at that program that's pretty good." And ironically, he had already been to one of our camps. So I mean, that just came up in casual conversation. But I think for most of us, I think the travel coaches are important um, to a certain degree. I think the high school coaches are really important because they see these kids every single day and they're with them. And obviously there's other people out there that run these kind of showcase camps, and those are important because those exposure camps. The one thing I can tell you they do is a lot of coaches are there, so you do have a chance to at least perform, in front of a number of college coaches at any particular event.
I know you kind of touched up on the perfect game. Are there any other like little showcases that are out there? I know PBR is a big one as well.
Yeah.
Everybody knows perfect game and PBR, but is there just maybe one or two that you can name that might help?
Yeah, I mean, you got the Arizona Fall Classic, and then you've got again these showcase types of camps, whether it's organizations like Head First, whether it's an organization like Showball, whether it's Play to Win, whether it's a Rising Prospect or a Chicagoland Classic or a Quakes event. Um, all these kids need to do is Google and they're going to show up. And then there's all different sort of tournaments, as whether it's out west, down Texas, in Chicago, down Florida, Atlanta, all over the place. So, there are some nice organizations out there that people can connect themselves with. Um, and then it's up for them to pick and choose. Now, sometimes it's a little bit pricey, but that's a decision that each particular family needs to make.
Exactly. Um, let's switch it over to how does the COVID-19 situation affect the recruiting for you guys? What is,
Yeah.
what's going to happen here in the future? I mean, this is probably going to change a lot of things as far as recruiting this year, at least.
Yeah. You know, I'll give you my own personal opinion is that we don't know when it's going to stop. We don't know when we're going to be allowed to get on planes again, get on fields again, and those types of things. And I'm okay with that. And there are many college campuses around the country that have either limited and or canceled all their summer camps, and they're doing it for the right reasons.
Right.
I know it hurts. I don't know if that's the right term, but we just got to become more creative and understand the value of every conversation. So, I know there's a lot of phone calls being made and everything like that, but when we're ready to open up again, and not just us over here at Harvard, but everybody else, then that's okay. And then I think people need to make a decision. So just because school X opens up their campus or this facility opens up, if I don't feel comfortable or I don't think it's a place where our staff should go, I'm going to make that decision. And we've already had those conversations as a staff.
Interesting.
So I don't want anybody going anywhere that has some vulnerability on my watch, whether it's myself or any member of our staff. And the other thing that you got to think about too is, when are our players going to come back to all of our campuses? Because there's some talk right now about, are we even going to open up? Not specifically us, but our college campus is going to open up again, or we're going to continue remote learning until we really are sure that this is the right thing to do. So, I give kudos to all the people in higher education across the country that are having these meaningful conversations because they are important.
Very important. Very important. Here's another one that I've been asked a lot. When it comes to scholarships, do players actually get a full ride, or is it mostly a mixture of academic, financial aid, and baseball? And what would a player most likely, receive?
Specifically from us, well, it's pretty easy. We're a non-scholarship school, so everything's based on need. And again, I've got to be very general in my conversations about that because it is part of, you know, the recruiting process. But you know, there's monies available out there across the country if you're, looking for a scholarship, but you better be a pretty good player to get some. They're capping out 11-7, and again, there's some flexibility this year in roster sizes, because of what we're going through. And as you well know, the whole thing with the major league draft is still sort of an uncertainty.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's going to be a domino effect, and that includes the summer ball leagues. Are they even going to open up? And you got host families, and because you played down the Cape and Chatham, and are there safe spaces out there? And I would, my opinion, Jermaine, is we just need to err on the conservative side, be really cautious about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And I'm not a panic guy. I mean, I was at the grocery store this morning with my gloves on and my mask on, and those types of things. But we just need to be careful. I mean, it's a pretty simple formula, right?
Yeah.
Just stay away, wash your hands. I mean, it's being communicated over and over and over. Just do it. It's not hard.
Here's the next question, the big one. Social media, how does that affect the recruiting process?
I don't know, because I don't have a Twitter account. I don't have a Facebook account. I don't have Instagram. And I'm not saying that's right. And I will tell you that I think now I need to get them because of what's going on. But it's just, it's another platform. I think we all know it. It's another platform. It's another way to communicate. Sometimes it's a way for different people to promote themselves, and that's okay. I heard a friend of mine say one time, if you're going to follow somebody, follow them for the right reasons because there's something there for you. But don't just follow people to follow people, because then you're just wasting your time. But if it's a meaningful thing that you can learn from and it's something you're interested in, by all means, then I think that's a good thing to do. So I am by the end of the month, I'll be up and running with a Twitter account. Finally,
I'll be following you.
Yeah.
Lastly, how much does a parent play a part in the recruiting process? Can they negatively affect the recruit, and how should they act at a showcase?
I think parents provide resources for their sons and daughters. I think they provide care and transportation, and and at the beginning there is a place for moms and dads, and maybe at the end too, because again, from a financial standpoint, they're going to probably support their sons and daughters. But the thing in the middle should be student driven. It's all about the kid, and it should be. I mean, nobody's paying $1,000 to go to a showcase to talk to, to evaluate mom and dad.
Right.
Even though we see those conversations, right? We're focused on the kid. I think a lot of us across the country will watch the interaction between the player and the parent because it's important. But, I think pushing this is a bad thing. Overdoing it is a bad thing. Kind of being in the background, behind the backstop, just kind of watching. That's what they call it, spectators.
Right.
Just be a spectator. And baseball can be a great spectator sport. Just watch it, and let your son or daughter, compete and let the chips fall where they may. But, listen, I'm a parent. I got 3 kids. I've been involved with a lot of parents over the years, and there's been some tough ones, but you got to go back and talk about all the good ones. That's all, because those are the ones you want to focus on, and kind of leave the other stuff to the side. But Again, I think there's a place, and there should be a place for moms and dads, you know, in this process. But at the end of the day, it's about your son or daughter, not about you.
So you're the head coach again at one of the most iconic schools. What's a day like for you? Before this situation, what's usually like a day, and how is it like on Harvard? Because I'm intrigued by that as well.
We got a wonderful setup. I mean, you can go online and see it, but our campus is basically split by the Charles River, and everything on one side of the river is mostly academic, and then we've got the athletic side, and we've got the largest Division I program in the country in terms of number of sports with 42. There's a lot of movement at our place. Being in an urban environment, a lot of people live away from the city. So, I've told our guys that, I'm not going to beat you down and you got to be at the desk at 6 o'clock in the morning, because there's so much you can do at home. And you look at college coaches and college recruiters across the country. What do we do all summer? We're not in our offices. So, and what are we doing today? We're mobile. And my message to my guys is, you know what? I have no problem. Matter of fact, I encourage you to get up in the morning, check your emails, let the traffic flow, and let it get in or whatever. And, we'll start our day when we all get there. But, we meet as a staff, our guys, like most people do, we try to plan the day, and sometimes that's interrupted, but because of our players and everything coming down. But, we have a pretty good setup where our office space and our locker room are joined together. And, by the time 7:30 comes around, we're probably shutting down out the door and move on to the next day, depending on what activity we are, whether in a lift, whether in a practice. We got to pay attention to the CARA, and the countable hours that we're allowed. So, and we're a little bit more restrictive in the Ivy League in terms of our non-traditional season, which is fine. But, it's days can be long, but that's not a bad term.
Right.
Sometimes the days fly by because you're just so busy all the time. But, by the time you touch base with the grounds guys, and, each of our staff is kind of in a little bit of a different situation, what they're responsible for. Our staff watches a lot of video, with all this new analytics. So I kind of chuckle with them. I didn't extend your day. You're just taking so much video, you got to watch it all. But they have some fun with it. The engagement that our staff has with our particular players is pretty special, So, yeah, I mean, sometimes, like right now, the days just kind of run together.
Yeah. I don't even know what day it is, to be honest.
Yeah. It is. Thank God it's Friday today, right?
Yeah.
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, I'm fortunate enough where, my wife's office is mobile, and she works from home, and, she's got the easiest commute on the South Shore. She comes down 12 steps, takes a left, and there's her office.
There you go.
So, but that, that's a good thing. And again, for our younger guys, our younger coaches, it's different. We're not all the same, but we just really just kind of want to feed off of one another. And, I do give a fair amount of autonomy out to my guys, which is important for me. But if they can handle it, they can handle it.
Well, it seems like, it's your time to go. I hear the noise in the background. So I want to, thank you for jumping on and giving your 2 cents on the recruiting process, your team, and just joining us. I think it's a great thing that you came on, and I'll be reaching out soon. Maybe we could do this in a few months just to reconnect to see how you were doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jermaine. Appreciate the opportunity. And I know we have a mutual friend out there in Rochester, and in Coach Rena. So give him my best. Stay safe. And if there's anything that we can do, please reach out. But I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.